Millionaire tested his poor fiancée by pretending to be broke. Now he regrets it. If I lost everything tomorrow, would you still love me? That's what he whispered, barely above the hum of the wind as they sat on her porch swing. Two hands intertwined, one heart hiding a secret. Gabriella smiled, brushing flour from her cheek. Of course I would. We'd plant more tomatoes, sell more pies. We'd be okay. He nodded but said nothing. Because what she didn't know was that Lucas Bennett, the man beside her in muddy boots and borrowed flannel, wasn't poor, not even close. He was the billionaire CEO of Summit Innovations. And everything she believed was about to be tested. Not her love, his. There's something sacred about a small-town morning. The sound of a rooster in the distance, sunlight dripping through a cracked window, the smell of coffee that's just a little too strong. That's how every day began on the Oliver family farm just outside Nashville. And for 6 months, Lucas Bennett, the man the world knew as a ruthless billionaire CEO, lived there as someone else. Not a lie exactly. Not at first. He'd met her at the farmer's market. She was selling pecan pies out of a chipped stand, her hair in a messy braid, apron dusted with flour. Gabriella Oliver, 26, culinary student, soft eyes, soft laugh, strong spine. He'd only stopped by to look at land, but something about her stopped him. She didn't flinch at his silence. She didn't ask what car he drove. She asked if he liked cinnamon in his pie. That night, back in his Chicago penthouse, Lucas couldn't sleep, not because of deals or board meetings, but because of her laugh. Her ease. Her way of making the world feel less sharp. So he came back. The next weekend, and the one after that. She never asked what he did, never Googled him. She just trusted. It scared him. His trust is a luxury men like him can't afford. His last fiancée, Vanessa, had taught him that. The day before their wedding, he'd overheard her on the phone, laughing, planning how she'd divorce him and take half. Since then, every woman he met came with a shadow. Every smile felt like bait. But Gabriella, she seemed different. So he tested her. Lucas told her he lost everything. His company, his wealth, his name. A partner stole it all, he said, tears in his eyes he didn't have to fake. She didn't even blink. She just opened her arms. You'll stay here, she said, tugging him into the old farmhouse. We'll figure it out. And he did. He shoveled dirt, burned his hands, slept in a room with no door. Her father, Miguel, shook his hand like a man welcoming a son. Her sisters treated him like family, no questions, no caution. Should have been enough. It should have been enough. The longer he lived, the more it would be dirty, unbeautiful. The more he lived, the more he learned, the more he learned. The more he learned, the more he learned, the more he learned. Not response, they keep coming. Especially the night she dropped to one knee beneath the willow tree behind the barn and whispered, Lucas, will you marry me? I don't care what we have, I just don't want to do life without you. He said yes. And when they kissed, with fireflies around them and dirt on their boots, Lucas almost believed he was just a poor man finally loved. But love built on lies has a short shelf life. Gabriella, the woman who gave him everything when she thought he had nothing, was about to discover the truth. It's not from him, but from the skyscraper lobby, where her husband walked in wearing a $10,000 0-cent suit and was greeted with one word. Mr. Bennett, Chapter 1, The Love Test. The road to the Oliver farm was uneven, gravel crunching beneath tires, fields of soy stretching out beneath a rising Tennessee sun. Lucas Bennett hadn't driven a car like this in years. No driver, no Bluetooth, just his hands on a dusty wheel and a lie that weighed heavier than steel. In the trunk was a box. Inside it, work boots, a flannel shirt 2 sizes too big, and a pair of Walmart jeans that still had the tag. He'd practiced the story on the drive down. Partner betrayal, forged documents, company stolen, everything gone. He didn't need it to be perfect. He just needed it to hurt enough to sound real. Because if Gabriella stayed after hearing it, If she still held him the same way, still looked at him like he was the only man in the world, then maybe, just maybe, she was the real thing. He parked half a mile from the farmhouse, changed in the back seat. The man in the mirror looked different now, unshaven, unsure. For a second, he almost turned around, but her face came to mind. That day at the market, her smile when he asked for her favorite pie, the way she said, "You don't look like a man who eats sweets, but I think you need one." He walked the last stretch barefoot, and there she was, on her knees in the dirt, watering tomato vines with a rusted can. Her hair was in a braid, face flushed from the sun, dirt on her knees, sun on her shoulders. Beautiful, in the way women used to be before the world turned artificial. When she saw him, her face lit up. "Lucas?" She dropped the can and ran, arms around his neck, the scent of vanilla and earth in her hair. He held her too tight, because he was about to break her heart without even meaning to. "Gabby, we need to talk." The smile faded from her lips. "What is it? What's wrong?" He looked down, a practiced sigh, a pause. "I lost everything." A beat of silence, then, What do you mean?" "My company, it's gone. A partner, someone I trusted, stole money, forged documents. By the time I found out, the board voted me out. I'm ruined." He let his voice crack, tears blurring his vision. Some were real, not because he'd lost anything, but because he might lose her. Gabriella didn't flinch. She didn't step back. She didn't ask about the money or the headlines or whether he'd be okay. She just reached for him, just held his face between her hands. "Lucas, we'll get through this. Together." He blinked. "Together?" She smiled, soft and certain. "Of course. Do you think I'd leave you now?" She didn't wait for an answer. She took his hand and led him to the front porch of the old farmhouse. "You'll stay here with us. Dad won't mind. We have room." "But I can't pay for anything," he said, still clinging to the lie. Who said anything about money? That was the moment he almost confessed. But her fingers were laced through his, and her heart, unguarded, whole, had just made room for him inside it. That night he sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by people who had no idea who he really was. Miguel, her father, had the hands of a man who'd worked for decades and eyes that didn't miss much. He handed Lucas a plate of stew and said, "My home is your home. We don't let people go hungry here." Anna was already making the guest room. Clara brought him mint tea. "You look pale," she said. "Don't worry, it gets better." Lucas didn't speak. Couldn't speak. He's never, not in the thousands of meetings, boardrooms, award ceremonies, or gala dinners, had he been treated like this. Like family. Like a man. Not a brand. That night, Gabriella knocked softly on his door. She was in an old t-shirt, barefoot. "I brought you this," she said, setting a folded quilt at the edge of the bed. "Mama made it before she passed. It's my favorite." He took it like it was sacred. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. She looked at him then with a softness that shattered him. "You don't have to earn love, Lucas. You just have to stop running from it." He didn't sleep that night. He watched the ceiling until the moon moved west. He heard the old floorboards creak under her steps, the soft laugh of sisters in the room next door, and the chirp of a lone cricket beneath the window. And something inside him, something cold and long buried, began to thaw. By morning, his hands were blistered from shoveling beside Miguel. By night, he had dirt in his hair, sweat on his back, and something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. And the thought that maybe he was the one being tested after all. Would you still love someone if you found out they never trusted you in return? Chapter 2. A proposal in the dark. The Tennessee sky was velvet that night, stitched with stars that blinked like secrets. Gabrielle tugged him by the hand, barefoot on the dewy grass behind the barn. "Where are we going?" Lucas asked, breathless from the chill and the quiet joy in her eyes. "You'll see." They walked in silence until the field opened into a clearing he hadn't seen before. A small hill overlooking the edge of the woods where fireflies drifted like floating embers. "This is my favorite place," she said softly, sitting on the old wooden swing her dad had built decades ago. I come here when the world feels too loud." He sat beside her, close, but not close enough to betray the storm inside him. The lie still lived between them, but her peace wrapped around him like a second skin. He wanted to tell her, wanted to say, "I'm not who you think I am. I'm the reason you'll one day cry harder than you ever have." But she was looking at him, wide open, full of something he hadn't earned. Love. Pure, undeserved love. "Lucas," she said, her voice shaking now. "I know it hasn't been long. I know everything's a mess, but..." She reached into her sweatshirt pocket, pulled out something wrapped in a white ribbon. A tiny silver ring. Simple, no diamond, just truth. He froze. "Abby, what are you doing?" Her voice cracked, but her eyes didn't waver. "I'm asking you to marry me." The wind stopped. Even the trees stood still. She continued, "You told me you had nothing, that your whole world collapsed, and I didn't care then. I care even less now." She took his hand, pressed the cold metal ring into his palm. "I don't need a mansion or a title. I just want someone who'll wake up beside me and remember to bring in the chickens." She laughed through a tear. "Is that crazy?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the man who owned 5 houses, 3 companies, and a penthouse skyline view had never felt so poor. Poor in honesty, poor in courage. "Gabriella," he whispered, throat tight. "I know you're scared," she said, "and I know you've been hurt, but so have I. My mom died when I was 9. Dad broke after that. We've never had much, but we've always had each other." She stood, looked down at him with more strength than any CEO ever had in a boardroom. "And now, I want to have you. Not later, not someday, now." He stood slowly, and for the first time in his life, he didn't calculate what came next. He just nodded. "Yes." She slid the ring on his finger. It was slightly too small. "It's from my mom's drawer. Hope you don't mind." He smiled. "I've worn gold that meant less." They sat there until the stars faded into dawn. No headlines, no photographers, no million-dollar dress fittings. Just 2 souls beneath a willow tree, saying yes. The wedding was set for the following Saturday. No one questioned the timing, or the ring, or the simplicity of it all. Anna hemmed their mother's wedding dress. Clara made lemon cake. Miguel sanded down the old church benches. And Lucas, the billionaire CEO with the tightest calendar in the country, spent 3 afternoons fixing the chicken coop and making tomato steaks with a hammer he barely knew how to hold. The ceremony was at the white steepled church near the town square. There were 10 guests, 1 priest, and a dog that wouldn't stop barking during the vows. Gabriella wore flowers in her hair. Lucas wore a suit borrowed from the priest. When she said, "For better or worse, in richness or in ruin," Lucas felt the words pierce through every polished wall he'd ever built. And still, he said nothing. That night they danced in the backyard under strings of lights. Her sisters sang. Her father held her for one slow song. And Lucas sat beside a bonfire, sipping homemade wine, staring into flames that reminded him too much of what he'd built his world on. Control, secrecy, image. Later, as they lay in the tiny room, with the slanted ceiling and a window that let in too much moonlight, Gabriella whispered, "Thank you for saying yes." He looked over, the ring she gave him catching the light. "I should be thanking you." She kissed his chest, her breath warm against him. "This is the start of something good, Lucas. I can feel it." But Lucas didn't sleep that night, because he knew something she didn't. This wasn't the beginning. It was the countdown. What if the person you love the most built your entire future on a lie? Chapter 3. 2 lives, 1 lie. Chicago didn't wait for anyone. Not even for men who just got married under a tin-roof chapel with a pie instead of a wedding cake. Lucas Bennett stepped off the Greyhound bus alone, wearing the same scuffed boots he'd worn to dig fence posts on the Oliver farm. His suitcase was thrifted, his watch left behind. His identity hidden but not gone. Gabriella had kissed him at the station, her hands pressed against his cheeks like he was her whole world. He'd smiled, and then boarded the bus into the city where he ruled, as a ghost. Their new apartment was on the edge of Southside. cracked sidewalks, leaky radiators, windows that squealed when they opened. But Gabriella's eyes lit up when she stepped inside. "It's perfect," she whispered, spinning in the center of the one bedroom with the broken ceiling fan. Lucas had seen better broom closets, but through her eyes it felt honest. "Our first home," she whispered, placing their coffee mugs on the windowsill like they were fine china. He nodded, setting down the few things they had. And that night, when she fell asleep beside him on the lumpy mattress, her hand resting on his chest, he stared at the ceiling and asked himself the question he'd been avoiding for months. How long can you live a lie before it kills the truth? In the morning, Lucas told her he had a job interview. Assistant position at some mid-size firm, he said, zipping up a hoodie instead of his usual Armani suit. She packed him a sandwich in wax paper and slipped a note in the bag. "You've got this. I believe in you." He kissed her and walked 3 blocks before hailing a cab. Once inside, he changed in silence, out of his disguise, into a custom-tailored navy suit he kept hidden in a garment bag at a private locker downtown. By 9:00 a.m., he was stepping into the glass tower that held Summit Innovations, the company he built from the ground up. "Mr. Bennett?" his secretary gasped, coffee nearly spilling from her hand. "Where have you been?" He smiled. "Let's just say, I've been finding out what matters." For the next 3 weeks, he lived 2 lives. Daylight. He was Lucas Bennett, CEO, commanding boardrooms, managing merger wars, attending charity galas he skipped last year. Evening, he was Lucas Oliver, broke assistant, husband to a small-town girl who thought they were building a dream from scratch. He had 2 phones, 2 wallets, 2 faces. He left each morning with a fake briefcase, walked 5 blocks, then changed into his real identity in the bathroom of a department store. He returned each evening with made-up stories, a clumsy boss, boring spreadsheets, burnt coffee. Gabrielle listened like it was scripture. "You're doing so well," she'd whisper, feeding him spoonfuls of tomato bisque she made from a recipe her mom left behind. Step by step. Meanwhile, she was building something real. She got accepted into a culinary program at the University of Chicago. Started baking cupcakes in their tiny kitchen, leaving trails of powdered sugar and cinnamon on every counter. "One day," she said, "I'll have my own bakery, maybe call it Gabby's Sweets. Wouldn't that be cute?" Lucas nodded, pretending to struggle with bills while his actual bank account grew by the hour. It tore him in half, because every time he lied, she loved him more. Every time she scraped together rent, he had the power to buy the building. And every night, when she curled into him and whispered, "We're gonna make it, baby," he wanted to scream. One night, he came home late from a crisis meeting about a hostile takeover. Summit's shares were dipping, investors were scared. Gabriella was asleep on the couch, flour still on her cheeks, an open notebook of cake designs on her lap. He sat down beside her and just watched. This woman, this radiant, simple, heartbreaking woman, had no idea she was sleeping beside a man built on lies. He brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered, "I'm sorry." The next morning, he poured her coffee, kissed her cheek, told her he was heading in early. She packed him another sandwich, another note. "The world doesn't see how incredible you are, but I do." He held it in his hand long after he stepped into his penthouse office. And for a moment, he almost tore it all down. Almost walked out in his suit, showed up at their tiny apartment and told her everything. Record. But then, "Mr. Bennett," his assistant called, stepping into the office. "You need to see this. Jeffrey Winters just bought another 6% of Summit. He's pushing hard." A pause. "Is using your disappearance to claim you're unstable, that you've lost control." Lucas clenched his jaw. He couldn't walk away now. Too many jobs, too many people depending on him. Not yet, he told himself. Just a little longer. Then I'll tell her everything. But fate doesn't wait for honesty. Sometimes, the truth walks straight through the door you forgot to lock. And Gabriella? She was about to knock on the one door that would shatter everything. If someone built your love story on a lie, but loved you with every breath, would you forgive them? Chapter 4. The Lobby Reveal. It was supposed to be just another brave day. Gabriella dressed carefully, Her best navy skirt, white blouse pressed flat with the iron her sister Anna had given her before she left for Chicago. The box of cake samples was tied with twine, tucked beneath her arm like a bouquet of dreams. "Corporate events," she whispered to her reflection. "Small clients first. One yes is all I need." Lucas had left early that morning, claiming his boss needed help with an inventory spreadsheet. He kissed her like nothing was wrong. But something was wrong. She felt it. In his distance, in the strange pauses between his words, in the way he never quite met her eyes lately. Still, she brushed the thought away. He was trying his best, just like her. She would make him proud. Gabriella started at the small buildings, local insurance offices, shared co-ops, quiet law firms. Some receptionists smiled and took her card. Others barely glanced at the cakes. It didn't matter. Each rejection hardened her determination. She'd built her whole life from scraps, one pie at a time, one choice at a time. By late afternoon, the sun was beginning to set behind the mirrored towers of downtown Chicago. Her feet ached. Her blouse was sticking to her back. She had one last sample box. Just one. And then she saw the building. A glittering skyscraper of glass and steel. At the top, in bold black letters, "Summer Innovations." Her breath caught. "Isn't that the place Lucas used to work?" She shook her head. "No, he said he worked at a smaller firm, mid-level, nothing flashy." Still, something pulled her forward. Maybe a receptionist inside would know someone. Maybe this could lead somewhere unexpected. She straightened her skirt, smoothed her hair, and walked through the revolving doors. The lobby was marble and echo. High ceilings, polished floors, a massive LED screen looping product promos and tech accolades. Gabrielle approached the front desk. "Hi, I'm Gabrielle. I'm a culinary student, and I've started a boutique cake service. I brought some samples, if anyone would like to." The receptionist smiled, mid-50s, elegant. "I love cake," she said, peeking into the box. "May I?" Gabriella nodded. And as the woman took a small bite of cinnamon almond cake and made a delighted noise, Gabriella's eyes wandered to the elevators. And froze. Because walking across the marble floor, surrounded by suited men, laughing, confident, was Lucas. Not the Lucas she'd kissed that morning. Not the tired assistant in second-hand shoes. This man wore a tailored navy suit, polished shoes, a gold watch that shimmered under the lobby lights. He didn't look out of place. He looked like he belonged there. Like he owned it. "Mr. Bennett," one of the men said, clapping him on the back. "Incredible presentation today." "Thanks, Richard," Lucas replied, not slowing his pace. "Let's get marketing to run with the numbers. This launch has to be flawless." The elevator doors opened. He stepped inside. Smiling, confident. Gabriella's hand slipped. His sample box crashed to the floor, scattering cupcakes like shattered glass across marble. The receptionist startled. "Oh dear, are you all right?" But Gabriella couldn't answer. She stood there, frozen, staring at the closed elevator doors. Her chest felt hollow, her ears rang. It wasn't just betrayal. It was exposure. Everything, every moment, every kiss, every whispered promise in their cramped apartment was a lie. She bent down, gathered what she could, mumbled an apology, walked out fast, heart in her throat. The cold air hit her like a slap. She got on the first bus without checking the number, and for the entire ride, she said nothing. Just held the ruined cake box in her lap, like an anchor. When she got back to the apartment, the curtains looked different. The couch looked staged. The man who said he had nothing had chosen to live here. Not because he had to, but because he was watching her, testing her. She sat on the edge of the bed for an hour, unmoving, until her phone rang. It was him. "Hey, Gabby," Lucas said. "Don't wait up for dinner. Things ran late at work." She kept her voice steady. "Okay, good luck." "You okay? You sound off." "I'm fine. Just tired. Love you." She didn't say it back. She hung up and stared into the dark, and whispered to the silence. "Who are you?" What hurts more, the betrayal or the realization that you loved someone who never trusted you back? Chapter 5. The Confrontation. Midnight. The apartment was silent, except for the hum of the fridge and the distant rumble of trains. Gabriella sat on the edge of the bed, suitcase half packed on the floor. Her wedding ring sat in her palm like a stranger. She stared at it, not crying anymore. There were no tears left. Only stillness. And one question echoing in her mind like a scream held behind closed lips. Why? The door clicked. Lucas stepped in, his tie loosened, hair tousled like always. But tonight, everything about him looked artificial. Even his exhaustion. "Gabi," he said, seeing her awake. "You're still up." She didn't answer, just stared. "Long day," he added, setting his keys on the counter. "You okay?" Her voice came quiet. "Who are you?" Lucas paused. "What?" She stood slowly, the small apartment suddenly feeling like a stage she hadn't realized she'd been performing on. "I said, who are you, really?" He swallowed. "Gabi, what?" "I went downtown today," she cut him off. "I was handing out cake samples, trying to chase a dream, you know, the one I've been telling you about for weeks." Lucas stepped forward, cautious now. "Let's talk in the morning, okay? You're tired." "I saw you," she said, louder, "at Summit Innovations, walking across that marble floor like you owned it." The blood drained from his face. "You were in a suit that cost more than this apartment's rent. People called you Mr. Bennett." Her voice cracked. "That's your real name, isn't it? Lucas Bennett, the CEO." He tried to speak, failed. Gabrielle laughed, but it wasn't humor, it was heartbreak. "So tell me, what was all this?" She gestured around. "The fake job, the thrift store couch, the stories about your ruined company? Was I just your little experiment?" Lucas stepped forward, voice low. "Gabi, yes, I lied, but please listen." "Listen?" she snapped. "You married me under a fake name, Lucas. You let my family give you their savings. You lived in my home, my life, pretending you had nothing." She backed away when he tried to reach for her. "You looked me in the eye every single night and said, 'I love you,' while you were testing me like some social experiment." He dropped his gaze. "I didn't mean to hurt you, but you did." Her voice was shaking now. "You let me think I was saving you. You let me fight for our future when you already had one." Lucas finally looked up. There were tears in his eyes now. "I fell in love with you before the lies, Gabi. But I was afraid. I'd been used before. You thought I was just like the rest." Silence. She turned, picked up the suitcase, zipping it in one firm motion. "I'm going home," she said, voice trembling but steady. "Back to the farm. Back to real." "Please," Lucas whispered. "Don't go, not like this." She paused at the door, looked back. "I loved you, Lucas. Not the CEO, not the suit, just the man who made tomato steaks and kissed me like I was the only thing keeping him breathing. But that man, he was a lie." And then she left. Lucas stood alone in the center of the apartment, surrounded by furniture he never needed, in a life he didn't deserve. The silence was deafening, and when he sat on the floor, holding the ring she left behind, he broke. If love is built on lies, does the truth still have the power to save it? Chapter 6. Back to dirt, back to truth. The bus pulled into the station just after sunset. The countryside looked exactly as she left it, but Gabriella was different now. She stepped off the bus with a battered suitcase in one hand and a broken vow in the other. Her wedding ring sat in a side pocket. She didn't know if she'd ever wear it again. The scent of dirt, dew, and distant chimney smoke met her like a whisper, like something had been waiting for her. Miguel was already standing at the edge of the road, arms crossed, eyes scanning. The moment he saw her, he didn't ask questions. Just opened his arms. She collapsed into them, tears coming like thunder behind the dam of silence she'd held for days. "Shh," he whispered, holding her like when she was small. "You're home now, mija. And home doesn't ask why, it just holds you." Anna and Clara came running. Tea, blankets, cookies she couldn't eat. They didn't talk about him that first night, not really. Just sat around a table like women holding each other's silence. Until Gabriella finally said it. It lied about everything. Anna's eyes flared. That bastard. He was testing me, Gabriella added, quieter now, to see if I loved him without money. Clara reached across the table, took her hand. He did. The next morning, Gabriella woke to the smell of breakfast and the sound of the rooster that never shut up. She stood in the kitchen barefoot, watching her sisters move like a dance. Pancakes flipped, coffee brewed. Normalcy returned, but not inside her. Inside she felt empty, like someone had scooped her out and left only the shell. That afternoon, she walked the fields. She hadn't cried all day. She didn't need to. She just needed the wind, the soil, the sky. And that's when she felt it, a sharp twist in her stomach. Then nausea. Then dizziness. She sat down quickly on the edge of the garden. Clara came running. You okay? Gabriella shook her head. I think something's wrong. It wasn't stress. It wasn't exhaustion. It was 2 pink lines on a test strip an hour later. She stared at the result, hand over her mouth. Clara was the first to speak. Gabi, I can't do this. Yes, Clara whispered. You can. A week later, she was in the clinic. Blood pressure too high. High risk, the doctor warned. You need rest and someone to help. But Gabriella shook her head. I didn't want him to know. That night, sitting on the porch swing, wrapped in a quilt, she whispered her fears to the stars. 2 babies, she said out loud, and no one to rock them but me. She didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and let the night rock her. Miles away, Lucas sat in the apartment they once called home. Alone. Every photo she left behind had become sacred. Every recipe card, every piece of paper with flour smudges. He picked up the cake box she'd dropped that day, now bent and empty, and held it like a relic. I ruined everything. But he wasn't done. Not yet. When the truth finally strips love bare, can it ever be dressed again in hope? Chapter 7. Storm Season. Storms don't ask permission. They just arrive, wild, unapologetic, tearing through whatever you thought was safe. It started with the heat. Weeks of sun that burned the fields dry, cracked the dirt beneath Gabriella's feet, and turned the farm into a brittle shell of itself. Her father Miguel said little, but every morning he rose earlier, stayed out later, hands in soil that refused to give back. The well ran low, the sky offered nothing, and inside the farmhouse, Gabriella's body began to weaken, 2 lives growing inside her, stretching her thin like parchment. The dizziness came more often now. Sometimes, Clara caught her holding the wall. Rest, she'd whisper. Gabrielle would nod and keep moving. One afternoon, as thunder rumbled on the horizon, Gabriella stood at the window, watching the sky bruise. A storm was coming, but it wasn't the one outside. Lucas had tried everything, letters, calls, even showing up once, only to be turned away at the gate by Miguel's silence. So he did what Gabriella never expected. He returned, not as a CEO, but as a farmhand. The first morning, Miguel found him already in the fields, dirt on his hands, shirt soaked with sweat. You really want to work? Lucas didn't flinch. I want to earn back what I broke. Not just her trust, yours. Miguel studied him. No special treatment. You sleep in the barn, you eat what we eat, you work harder than all of us combined. Lucas nodded once. Understood. Gabriella didn't see him until the 3rd day. She was walking the porch, hand resting on the gentle curve of her stomach, when she looked up and froze. He was on his knees in the mud, repairing an irrigation pipe, face sunburned, hands blistered, shirt clinging to him like pennants. He looked up. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. He simply nodded. She turned, walked back inside, heart pounding so loud she had to sit down. That night, Clara cornered her in the kitchen. He's different, she said, quieter, softer. Gabriella shook her head. You think blisters make a man honest. Clara placed a hand on her sister's belly. I think he's trying, and I think these two deserve to know their father tried." Gabriella didn't answer, because part of her wanted to believe it. And that part scared her most of all. The storm broke on the 7th night. Wind like wolves howled across the fields, tearing shingles, toppling barrels. The rain came sideways, thick, angry. The old barn moaned under pressure. Lucas stayed up all night shoring the doors, tying down equipment, dragging tarps over crops. Gabriella watched from her window. He moved like a man desperate to save more than a farm. In the morning, when the sun returned like nothing had happened, the house had lost a few shingles. But the fields, thanks to Lucas, had survived. Gabriella walked outside, hands trembling, and found him sitting on the porch steps, dirt smeared across his cheek. "You didn't have to do all that," she said softly. He looked up, tired but peaceful. "Yes, I did." Later that week, while the family worked to repair what the wind had broken, Gabriella fainted in the hallway. She woke in the clinic to soft beeping and the scent of antiseptic. The doctor was calm, but firm. "You're carrying twins, and your blood pressure is rising again. You'll need to stay here. No movement, no stress." Her chest tightened. "I can't afford." The doctor held up a hand. "Is taken care of." That night in her hospital room, Gabriella opened her eyes in the dark. Lucas was asleep in the armchair, head resting on his hand, his other hand gently holding hers. Tears traced silently down his face as he whispered, "Please be okay. I'm sorry for everything. I don't care if you ever forgive me. I just need you to make it." She closed her eyes again, heart thundering. He didn't know she was awake. But somehow, she needed to hear it like that. Can a heart trust again? Not through words, but through presence? Through someone showing up, even after everything? Chapter 8. The Unspoken Vow. Hospitals hum differently at night. Not like machines, not like fear, but like memories. Soft, flickering, like candlelight trying to stay lit in wind. Gabrielle lay still in the narrow bed, wires tracing her pulse, machines charting the rhythm of 2 tiny heartbeats inside her. Lucas hadn't left in 4 days. Not once. Each night he sat in that same stiff chair beside her, sleep tugging at him but never fully winning. He read aloud when she couldn't sleep. Mostly nursery books, sometimes poems. He brewed tea in the nurse's break room, carefully adding 2 spoons of sugar like Clara had shown him. He took conference calls in the hallway, quietly, respectfully, but never once stopped being here. Even when she refused to look at him, even when she didn't speak. That was his apology now. Presence. Not flowers, not speeches, just showing up. On the 5th night, Gabriella finally broke the silence. "I read your letters," she said, staring at the ceiling. Lucas looked up slowly, hope flaring behind his exhaustion. "They weren't enough," she said, voice quiet. "But they were something." He didn't move closer, just nodded. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I only hope for a second chance to be the man I pretended to be." She closed her eyes, then whispered, "Man, wasn't a lie. I just need to know if he's real." The next morning, the doctor delivered news with a cautious smile. "We're stable, but you'll remain here until delivery, no exceptions." Miguel came to visit, bringing fresh farm eggs and silence. He didn't speak to Lucas, but he didn't ignore him either. And when Gabriella fell asleep mid-sentence, Miguel looked across the bed and said, "If you want to prove you're different, son, don't just stand here. Stay. Through the mundane, the boring, the hard." Lucas nodded. "I'm not going anywhere." And he didn't. Days blurred into weeks. Lucas lived in that room, shaving in the sink, making bottle lists, researching baby bassinets. He wrote code on his laptop during the day and sang quietly to Gabriella's belly at night. One afternoon, Gabriella looked over at him folding laundry and said, "You've changed." Lucas paused. "Or maybe," she added, "you're just finally showing me who you really are." He sat beside her, careful, respectful, and said, "That's all I want to do." A few days later, Gabriella looked out the hospital window, eyes soft. "I want the twins to grow up near the farm, but also near opportunity. Lucas blinked. You mean Chicago? She nodded slowly. I'm not saying yes, but I'm saying I might not be saying no forever. He exhaled like someone who'd been holding his breath since she left. I'll wait, he said. As long as it takes. The following week, Gabriella's blood pressure spiked again. Emergency lights, rushed doctors, silent panic. The twins were coming early. Too early. Lucas gripped her hand as she was wheeled away, whispering, Hold on, please, just hold on. Hours later, after sterile rooms and surgery and the longest wait of his life, a nurse appeared with tears in her eyes. They're small, but strong, she said. Both of them. Gabriella was pale but smiling when he entered the room. She lifted her hand slowly. Meet your daughter, Clara Bennett, and your son, Miguel. Lucas broke, not with words, but with quiet sobs, forehead resting against her hand. I don't deserve this, he whispered. She squeezed his fingers. Maybe not, but you showed up anyway. When love is tested by silence, by storms, by the waiting, can presence itself become a vow? Chapter 9. The Bakery and the Ring. 6 weeks after the twins' birth, the sun rose differently. It lit the valley like it had something to say. Warm, hopeful, the kind of light that seeps into the cracks of a life that's been shattered and slowly stitched back together. Gabriella stood on the porch in her robe, Clara in one arm, Miguel in the other, breathing in the soft scent of spring hay and fresh-baked bread. Lucas stood behind her, quiet, holding a mug of tea. Neither spoke. They didn't have to. That afternoon, Lucas drove her down the winding road, not saying where they were headed. Just trust me, he said. But this time, there was no manipulation in it, no performance. Just a man asking softly. She did. They turned into a gravel driveway near the edge of the farm, where a small, new wooden building stood. Rustic, elegant. A hand-painted sign above the door read, Gabby's Artisan Bakery. Gabriella froze. What is this? Lucas parked, stepped out, opened her door. It's yours. She blinked. You built me a bakery? I used the name on your first recipe card, he smiled. The one you left in the Chicago apartment. The one with cinnamon stains. Gabrielle walked inside slowly, her breath catching. Marble countertops, copper pans, a wall of spices, a cafe corner with 4 little tables made of reclaimed wood. It was everything she'd dreamed of. Maybe more. I don't understand, she whispered. When did you... Lucas looked down at his hands, still calloused, still marked from weeks on the farm. While you were in the hospital, your father and sisters helped. I didn't want to wait. And Summit? She asked carefully. I stepped down. She turned, stunned. You, what? Lucas nodded. Marcos is CEO now. I'm on the board. But I needed a different life. You gave up a billion-dollar company. He stepped forward, eyes steady. I didn't give up anything. I traded it. For this. For us. She stared at him, emotions crashing like waves. And then he reached into his back pocket, pulled out a tiny box. Her breath caught. Not again, not like before. But this time, everything was different. He opened it slowly. Inside, not a diamond. Just a simple silver band. Engraved with one word. Truth. I don't want to rewrite the past, he said. I just want to start the rest of our life on the truth. No disguises, no tests, no masks. He knelt, not for show, just for stillness. For the mother of my children, he whispered, for the girl who sold pies and never stopped believing in what was real. Will you marry me again? Gabrielle stared at him. The man who broke her, the man who rebuilt her trust, with each quiet morning, each changed diaper, each dish dried by hand. She looked down at the ring, and then at the tiny feet swaddled in her arms, and said, yes, but this time, I'm not marrying a CEO. She smiled, tears spilling freely. I'm marrying the man who stayed. Is real love what you fall into, or what you build together? Even after the breaking? Chapter 10. Home isn't a place. They didn't throw a wedding this time. They didn't need one. No white dress, no aisle. Just string lights between the barn and the bakery. Clara singing with a guitar. Anna baking pies until midnight. Lucas stood barefoot in the grass, Clara in one arm, Miguel in the other, waiting. Gabriella came out wearing a soft linen dress, the same one she wore the day he first kissed her behind the peach trees. Her hair was tied back simply. No veil. Just truth. She walked to him like someone who'd finally stopped running, not toward wealth or safety or dreams, just toward love. Miguel read the vows. Simple words, spoken under an open sky. Words not about promises of riches or forever, but about the daily showing up. Lucas took her hand. I vow to tell the truth, even when it's hard. Gabriella replied, I vow to forgive, even when I'm afraid. Their twins gurgled in the arms of their aunts. Chickens clucked in the distance. And when they kissed, there was no applause. Just stillness. Like even the world paused to say, this is what it's all for. That night, as fireflies blinked in the grass, Gabriella stood behind the bakery counter, barefoot, holding a warm tray of cinnamon buns. Lucas came up behind her, kissed her shoulder, whispered, Did you ever think we'd make it? She smiled. Not the way we did, but yeah, deep down I think I always hoped. Weeks passed, then months. The twins grew fast. Clara had Lucas's stubborn eyebrows. Miguel had Gabriella's laugh. Lucas rose early to open the bakery each morning while Gabriella breastfed in the rocker her mother once used. She baked. He brewed coffee. Customers came from towns over just to taste the cake that saved a CEO. They laughed at the title, because the cake didn't save him. She did. One rainy Sunday, Gabriella found an old picture tucked in Lucas's drawer. It was from the day he first visited the farm in disguise. He looked like a stranger back then. Clean hands, expensive watch. She smiled and tucked it into a new photo album titled, The Life We Chose. Some nights, they'd sit on the porch swing while the babies slept. Gabriella's head on his shoulder, Lucas's hand over hers. No speeches, no plans. Just presence. I used to think love was fireworks, he whispered once. But it's not. Gabriella looked up. Then, what is it? He kissed her forehead. It's coming home and knowing someone waited. What if true love isn't something you fall into, but something you keep choosing every single day? A whispered ending. It doesn't start with a mansion. It doesn't end with a ring. Real love, the kind that heals, starts with a question. Will you stay when everything else is gone? Gabriella thought she fell for a man with nothing. She found out he had everything. But the real twist wasn't his money. It was his choice to give it up, just to earn her heart again. He lied, yes. And the lie nearly destroyed them. But in the ashes of that betrayal, something rare happened. He stayed. He learned how to hold a baby, how to make bread rise, how to stand in a storm without running. And Gabriella, a woman who had every right to close her heart forever, chose to let him try. Not because he begged, but because he changed. Day by day, they built a love not on perfection, but on showing up. Again and again, when it mattered most. Through labor pains, through late-night feedings, through forgiveness that took time. He didn't save her. She didn't save him. They saved each other by meeting in the middle, without disguises, without power plays, without wealth. It is truth. Now, every morning, as the bakery bell chimes and the sun warms the flower-dusted windows, Gabriella still wears the same ring, the one engraved with one word, truth. Because money can build an empire, but only truth can build a home. If someone stripped everything away, the job, the house, the comfort, would your love still stay? Or deeper still, would you? If this story touched you, the next one goes even deeper. It's about a man who lost his voice after a tragedy until a waitress at a roadside diner helped him find it again. Click to watch. And remember, it's not the big gestures that matter. It's the mornings you stay, the nights you don't leave, the truth you keep choosing, even after everything. See you in the next story.